Hello, one and all. It is time for the weekly armchair kickoff. Once again, my name is Darragh. I am your host this evening, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dick McDonough, one of our new regulars. Dick, how are you today?
Good man, delighted to be here. Getting ready for the weekend, so all
As
ready.
always, aren't we all, man? And we're actually joined by a very special guest tonight. We're correct me if I'm wrong, though, John. You're a Sky Sports correspondent. Am I correct in saying that?
I'm a producer at Sky Sports, yeah.
Oh, very well. So we have a Coventry fan on board. In John, how are you today, man?
Well, much more important than being a producer at Sky Sports, I'm a Coventry fan. So, yeah, I'm very good. Thank you for having me. Yeah, hopefully we can keep this peaceful.
No, don't worry. It's not like we're going to be talking about Liverpool or City or anything like that. So, of course, we're going to be
Yeah.
a bit more friendly today. But I suppose we'll start with yourself, though, John, because obviously we don't know a whole lot about us or about you yourself. We don't know much about personally. I tried doing my bit of history on Coventry, haven't had a chance to get stuck in properly. So, I suppose talk about yourself a bit. How long you've been following or supporting Coventry, whether it be all your life or the young lad, and take us through your FA Cup run up to this point.
Okay, well, yeah, born and raised in Coventry. McLaughlin as a surname, you can probably guess where we hail from. So it's like the first generation that really got into following the club was my dad and his
Okay.
brothers. So I always wanted to go with my dad and his brother, my uncle Martin. My mum used to drop them up right by the ground, the old one at Highfield Road, and
Oh.
she'd drop them as near to the ground as she could. And I was a little kid in the back of the back seat of the car, going, "Why can't I go? Like they're buzzing. Why can't I go? This looks amazing." So I went as early as my 5th birthday. That was the first game I went to.
Okay.
Which I'm dating myself now, but that was 1981. So a slightly fruitier version of football than a lot of people are used to. And just to really rub it in, the game that my dad managed to choose for my first one was Leeds United at home, which was nice and peaceful in 1981, as you can imagine. It was a 4-0 home win. 4-0 home win, but a full-scale riot. So funny enough, I didn't go for 2 more years after that. But yeah, I've been into it ever since. So not much choice in our family, but I wouldn't want a choice really.
Oh god, no. It's interesting to, and then because like personally, no, I haven't followed many teams outside of Manchester United in terms of their FA Cup run. So take us through your FA Cup run, then just to give an idea, because like obviously we've had our run, and has yours been any slightly different?
Yeah, ours is first of all, it's a rarity recently to have a cup run. We've been really poor in the FA Cup for quite a few years now, and given the sort of history growing up, people are always a bit disappointed with that. Been back in the Championship, sort of, this is our 4th season, I'm going to say, back in the Championship, and that's become our focus. But we had a new owner take over 18 months ago after many years of bad ownership, and one of the things he said to Robbins straight away this year, "I want a cup run." And it's one of the things saying it, but it's another delivering it. But the draws have been pretty kind. We got Oxford United in the 3rd round at home, and we were playing really well around that time, and we spanked them in the 3rd round. Then we got Sheffield Wednesday, and
A good team in their own right as well, like.
Yeah, not bad, but it took a replay, but we got through that, and all of a sudden we were scoring quite a few goals as well. We put 6 past Oxford, and then we got past Sheff Wednesday, and all of a sudden it's one of those things. You're in the 5th round, and you're like, okay, and we ended up getting Maidstone United at home, and you're thinking, on one hand,
should be beating them.
yeah, very risky, very risky. We don't, we've been on the end of a Sutton United before in my lifetime, and that stings. Believe me, school the Monday after Sutton United was no fun, but we were still playing really well, and we put 5 past them, and then it's like, okay, quarter final, this is his cup run, this is the cup run. And then the next round is that ridiculous game at Wolves, which I think everybody got a sense of just how people go on about mad games in the FA Cup and upsets. Blimey, I don't think anyone saw that coming. I think people thought we could maybe give a good account of ourselves that day, but it really, everything that could go right did at the end.
Yeah, I suppose like even in that game now against Wolves, you're probably thinking, just give the performance, show we deserve to at least be there. Like, so it's one thing given the performance, as you say, and another thing actually come out on top is just short of amazing, if I'm honest. Like, because I was actually starstruck from us. They're like, did they actually beat Wolves? I wasn't following it. I just saw it come up on my phone. It goes, wait, what? So it was that kind of mindset. I was there like, my God, they actually managed to go ahead and do it. Like,
Well, it was 90 plus 7 and 90 plus 10 for the equaliser and the winner. And everyone was getting ready for extra time and maybe penalties.
Mm.
And just like that happens, you're like, well, you don't get many of them. You have to enjoy it. It was a really special day. It was a really unexpected treat. And all of a sudden you're like, geez, we're in the semi-finals. You know, we've
And
only been there. And we've been there once in the semis in our whole history. And that's when we won it. So like, I was a 10-year-old kid last time we were in the semi-finals.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because like I said, I didn't brush up entirely on the whole scenario, but you mentioned there the fact you were under new ownership, going off a bad ownership. And correct me if I'm wrong, it was definitely more on the financial side. So correct me if I'm wrong. Did I hear that you were basically told that the owners that were previously in charge basically had full control of the stadium and basically nearly dictated when you play there?
It was disastrous, really. Everything, you know, there's way too much to go into, but obviously when you drop out the Premier League, as we did in 2001, we'd been there, we'd been in the top for like 34 years. We kind of knew it wouldn't last because you can't keep staying up on the last day and all of that. So not really any complaints in terms of we'd ridden our luck, but we went down in an era which was really poor, and the ownership were a hedge fund. No one knew who they were. And with that, the new stadium was being built at the worst possible time. You know, we probably should have stayed at Highfield Road. We should have stayed at the Spiritual Home. It's a lovely idea, the new stadium. But by the time you get there, we were so broke, the club had to sell its stake in it to somebody else just to stay afloat. And then you're in the hands of other people. And long story short, eventually Wasps Rugby Club, London Wasps, ended up owning the stadium. They couldn't afford it either. They've gone bust since. But we were basically being told what we could and couldn't do. And a lot of people feel like the local city council sided with the rugby club rather than the football club. And we ended up playing in Northampton and Birmingham, which was awful, you know?
And Jesus, like, even to bring in Deck here now, is the fact that we talk about bad ownership under the Glazers, and you hear something like that going on, like, it just makes you think, like, of course, in the be-all, end-all of what we are used to as Manchester United fans, the Glazers are the devil in that regard. But when you hear stuff like that, it's just mind-boggling to think you would even go that far. Like, and like,
crazy.
I get it's down to revenue and money from TV rights and all that. But even now, even the EFL are starting to come into their own right with more TV rights. Now, obviously, it's never going to be as big as the Premier League, say. But at least there's a build on that. So hopefully, going forward, it channels down into the lower leagues as well. Because obviously, with the fairy tale story of Wrexham coming up and up through the ranks, there's going to be more League One matches now coming onto, especially now they've been promoted to League One now. So that's the kind of thing. I'm hoping it's not just because of the channel effect of Welcome to Wrexham and all this from Disney Plus. I'm hoping it actually genuinely starts to channel down into, rather than just throwing only Wrexham, where you actually show the proper League One games. Like, I'll be honest, I quite enjoy watching the Championship playoffs every year. Like, I take no notice of the duration of the season, but personally, I love just the idea of watching. Because I remember growing up watching, let's say, that famous Dean Winhill's goal at Wembley, that kind of thing. Like, so like it's those kind of moments that I'm there. Like, that's the reason I would also follow the EFL if I had a club I couldn't do, who I'd be supporting from down below. But at the same time, it just shows the EFL has something going there. So hopefully it channels down more into so hopefully there's no more scenarios of, let's say, financial situation for Coventry, no more administration.
I feel like we've turned a corner. Yeah, we had to wait a while. I feel like we've turned a corner. The new owner is a guy called Doug King, very successful businessman. And he's not going to throw mad amounts of money at it. It's that whole Brentford model: buy players cheap, develop them, sell them on. And we managed to do that a year ago with Victor Gyökeres, who went off to Sporting Lisbon. And again, if he moves again this summer, we're going to make a good bit of money out of that as well. And it's all those residuals, you know. It helps pay for the players that will be out on the pitch on Sunday.
That just shows the massive side of it, really.
Yeah.
And I suppose to bring on to the United side of it, we kind of have to unfortunately talk about our own manager in this regard, because of course every day is a United story in myself and Deck's eyes, and we have to talk about Erik ten Hag in this regard. So Deck, I'll bring it to you there. Erik ten Hag, obviously at the end of the day, United themselves have been underwhelming on the pitch. Is this a do or die for Eric Ten Hag though this week? If Coventry managed to pull off the win against us, is this the end of Eric Ten Hag once and for all? Like, does he go before the end of the season, do you think?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Coventry getting through. They deserve it. No team gets there by luck alone. The game against Wolves was massive, so they've earned their place in the semi-final. Obviously, as a United fan, I hope we get the win on Sunday, but Coventry deserve it. Robbins has them firing on all cylinders. They're playing attractive football, so looking forward to a good game on Sunday. That's all we want, and we don't want it marred by any stupid VAR or any other things. If we lose on Sunday, is Eric Ten Hag gone? I hope not. I think we have to persevere with Eric next season. I just don't see the point of getting rid of managers after a year. It hasn't worked for us for the last 10 years. I was lucky enough to be there when Fergie lifted the last trophy in the league. Well, the last league trophy in 2015. And you need to persevere with a manager. You can't just go gung-ho and keep chopping and changing. It hasn't worked for us. I hope he'll be there. Do I fear for him if Coventry beat us? 100%. I don't think Ineos or Sir Jim Ratcliffe are too worried about anyone in any regard in relation to the running of the club. They have a business model in place. They probably have a plan in place, win or lose, and they'll adapt it accordingly. I like the way they're operating. I like the way they seem to have ideas for the future. But I definitely fear for Eric if we lose on Sunday yet.
And like you say there, they obviously have that business plan in place. Do you think they already have a decision made whether we win a FA Cup or not?
I think they have a plan in place for both scenarios. If Eric wins the FA Cup, I think he's guaranteed another year. But I also think they're so thorough in what they have planned for Manchester United that if he doesn't win it, they also have a plan for that. I think they've all the bases covered. I think winning the FA Cup or losing the FA Cup is going to dictate what plan they're going to move forward with.
But for me personally, no, I actually believe that, in all honesty, they have the plan in place where win or lose the FA Cup, they're going to continue. I would hope anyway, this is the case anyway, that they continue with Eric Ten Hag on the basis that it's all down to the fact that I know we can't mitigate the injuries and everything like that, because while we've shown that if we're missing certain players, the football performance on the pitch is not there. So you can't just mitigate it on that alone. But having said that, then you're kind of thinking, is he the man to take hold of it? But I want to see him at least take hold next season, because they're talking about the idea of him going into next season, because they wouldn't be letting him in on the transfer guide for the summer if they don't have a plan in place to keep him or to get rid of him in that regard. And even here, John, what do you make of it all, looking at it from the outside then, really?
Well, it's always an interesting one, because clubs as big as Manchester United, because of where we've been, have become a bit of a concept to us. You're watching it from a distance. The Premier League's enormous enough as it is, and then there's those few clubs which obviously United are one of. I've got a few relatives and quite a few mates as well who are United fans, and they're split. They're really split. I mean, I think everybody knows the recruitment's been all over the place in the last years. And when I say all over the place, I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, there's been some brilliant signings, but the strategy doesn't seem to necessarily be fully in place. And even I believe today they've just finally confirmed Jason Wilcox. So they're getting there.
Just in the last half hour,
yeah. So they're building. Ineos always said, we want to run the football side. We know the Glazers are in place. We know the corporate side is there, and it's a money-making machine, even though they've got all that debt to service, which is awful, but it's the way it is. What I think, people looking in from the outside say is kind of how have Manchester United got to this? Because it's so hard when you're chasing City, chasing Liverpool. You can't really afford to get one or two windows behind, and it feels like you're quite a few windows behind. But a good one can do so much to gain a bit of traction. And I think whoever's in charge, this summer window ahead is absolutely huge for the club. And Ten Hag's got a year left, I think.
I think 1 year, and I think there's an option for an extension of another.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting. I feel like with new owners, they always tend to eventually want to put their own man in because they'll answer for their own man. They don't feel like they have to answer for somebody else's past appointment. But I think they're wary of just doing it for the sake of it too soon and maybe see who's out there this summer. Because we're seeing Liverpool haven't got anybody yet and Barcelona haven't got anybody yet. Everybody's kind of biding their time a bit, aren't they? And
even Bayern haven't got anyone yet because there was talk of Nagelsmann, and sure he's after signing on for another 2 years in the German national team. So who knows what's going to happen, really.
And they're saying at Bayern, like, Tuchel's got to go. He could end up winning the Champions League in a few weeks. You know, he's in the last four. It's nuts, isn't it? And then do they have to change their mind? Does he change his mind? So I think there's a lot. I think you're right. The FA Cup does play a big part for Ten Hag. And it feels like he's constantly on trial, which isn't very nice for him. But I think anyone can see that this is a United that's in transition. And I know people use that phrase a lot, but they are. It's like, you know, there's some really good players there and there's probably some players who need to move on. But as I think a lot of pundits say, moving people on is a lot easier said than done when they're on vast amounts of money and they've got 3 years left, you know?
Thankfully, Jack's favourite man is actually on the way out.
100%. I can't wait to see the back of Tony
Martial.
God. He is the epitome of
it?
everything that is wrong with the modern Premier League. I can't even call him a player because I can't. I just don't think he deserves to be mentioned in the same breath as players, and definitely players that have played for United. He's everything that's wrong with the club. I mean, I thought it was bad when we had Pogba there, but I mean, it is a disgrace that these people have been allowed rob a wage from a club for so long. So yeah, he's gone in the summer. Thank God. I'll drive him wherever he wants to go. I'll bring him on the boat back to France, wherever he wants to go. I don't care. Goodbye. Good riddance.
And like what, 3 managers on the trot have had to, you know, they've kept faith with him, haven't they? It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know. Does he have photos or?
Honestly, he has something on someone.
Yeah,
I think that's the best way to put it. Really.
Yeah.
But like, I suppose
proof of Area 51 or something. I don't know.
But I suppose, look, sticking with the FA Cup, we'll talk about the most recent news. Was it only yesterday it came out in the whole news of the replays being scrapped. Now, I didn't really understand. Like, I knew they were going to phase out the whole replays in the higher round games. Now, that was understandable. But let's say third round, fourth round, I always enjoyed the idea of, let's say United draw with Wrexham in the third round. It's away at the race ground, so they have the race ground hosting Man United. They play for the draw. They get their dream trip to Old Trafford. That is an ideal scenario. That is what the FA Cup was made of. So the idea of it being scrapped, and even the talk of, let's say, the higher round games being played separately to the Premier League, and of course, EFL are biting back the separate clubs of the EFL. I saw was it Tranmere Rovers or someone like that.
Yeah,
came up with a statement it's going to be a very messy scenario. So, John, I'll start with you there. What's your whole opinion, especially coming from the EFL side of it?
It doesn't sit very well. I think everybody who is not in the Premier League feels a little bit like it's not just what it is now. It's a sign of things to come. We've seen this. We all saw the Super League attempt a few years ago. And then, you know, we heard nothing but in COVID, football's nothing without fans and we can't wait to have you back. A couple of years later, what we're seeing, even the biggest clubs are putting their prices up, you know?
Yeah.
Some clubs are getting rid of concessions. That one, I can't believe that one.
I never heard that.
Tottenham on season tickets are getting rid of concessions, yeah. Yeah. So as it's been reported, and it just doesn't sit well because we all know it's a revenue, a much needed revenue for the clubs. And I do get the counter argument of the calendar's too busy. There's too much football, especially for the clubs at the top. But what I really don't like about it is the Champions League, especially the new format next season. Dear me, it's even more games in the autumn that nobody really buzzes off. I think we've all seen. Yeah.
It's like I see someone before compare, like when the whole thing was in its place. I remember hearing someone say this whole new system, if it's done poorly, of the Champions League could actually be compared to the Super League initially.
Oh, it bears a lot of resemblance, and it's not everybody playing each other home and away and all this sort of stuff. And it's that stuff where you sort of, the minute you hear it, you wince a bit and you go, why are they doing that? And then at the other end of the season, at the other end of next season is the first ever Club World Cup. And
that's it, yes.
Gosh. I mean, that is 32 teams. You're going to play loads of games, and it's in the summer at the end of a 9-month season.
I actually know
revenue driven. Everything seems to be revenue driven, and
for the same few clubs, right?
Yeah. I heard Tottenham actually got rid of their concessions because they had to hire an extra cleaner to get the dust out of the trophy cabinet.
Well, like it's more the idea that I actually didn't even hear the idea of getting rid of concessions, which is poor in itself. Because, like, fair enough, like, us at United, we've heard that the season tickets have gone up. Was it 5% each last 2 years?
Yeah,
you see, it's gone up 10% over the last 2 years. But you have to, like, I'm not going to defend the idea of putting it up 10% over 2 years, but you have to kind of remember that the prices of season tickets have been frozen at Manchester United for 10 years. So you're going back to Fergie times since the last time the season tickets actually went up. No, I'm not defending it in any shape or form, but you kind of have to think, look, everyone was making the excuse of everything going up, cost of living. I understand that, but at the same time, if you're wanting to keep the fans on board, well, myself and Jack I don't personally have a season ticket. Jack doesn't personally have a season ticket, but we know people who have had issues in recent time with just getting into a game, let alone their actual season ticket issue. Like, so it's something that really needs to be nipped in the bud. I think, I understand that the Glazers are still going to have the commercial side of it.
Yeah.
But the whole aspect of customer service, looking after the fans with their actual season tickets, it has to be taken care of. And, like, I'm not too sure if you heard this now yourself, John, but our correspondence from Manchester United came through that it's like 15 of the 19 minimum now you have to go to the home league games or something like that.
Right. Is that right?
Yeah. That came out.
It was meant to be 17 as well. Like, it was meant to be 17, but they backed down to 15.
Yeah, that came out in an email, and it's crazy because, I mean, what we're seeing as United fans, and this has happened during the course of this season, people not attending the games, when they sell their tickets back to United, these tickets are being sold on. United are making a big deal about transferring tickets, but then all of a sudden we have away fans in the Stretford end. We have away fans all over the stadium, and from what we've found out is the tickets that are going back are being sold for much more than face value. So, I mean, that makes no sense. That makes no sense to us. They're trying to stop touts from going, but yet when the tickets are being sent back to them, they're being sold for more money anyway.
And just to clarify, it actually is 17 or 19. Keane just 17.
Yeah.
I thought they pushed back down to 15. You see, so that's why I try clarifying it there.
It feels like a lot of clubs are in I don't know, just a bit of a mess with it. Really, they know the sort of feeling, the depth of feeling that's there with their fans, but everyone cites commercial pressures and stuff, but the TV deals just keep getting bigger and bigger. And, I work for a company, obviously, that, puts a lot of that TV money in, and it's grown and it's grown and it's grown. And it just feels like there's not much of a true appetite to really keep things under control and keep the fans close, because things move on, and it's like that fear of getting left behind,
Yeah, because, like, even you're like, and it's not even just one TV company, it's numerous TV companies. When they get the TV rights, they would put a game at such an awkward time on an awkward day because it suits them, and then it puts the fans under pressure that the last train be X time, so you immediately have to book a hotel. Like, so it's another added cost on top of, let's say, whatever the cost of a train ticket would be from, let's take the example, Manchester down to London. That's a hefty fare in itself, and then you're having to consider what the cost of a hotel would be in London, how close to wherever you're having to stay in London is. Like it's those kind of added costs that you're kind of putting the fans out as a whole, and like at the end of the day, it's one of two things. It could be one party, but it could be both at the same time coming together because it suits them, and that's not a shout on any particular crowd. But it's not even just Man United; it happens with all teams as well. Because I remember seeing Newcastle fans I can't remember what game it was. No, it was definitely a game down the south. But I remember seeing on Twitter, because the game was fixtured for such a date, that they were saying last train is this day, this is a disgrace and all this, and like we do all agree it does come into play that way. Like,
yeah, there's people that want to go to everything, and you have to respect that. It's a big part of a lot of people's lives, and I think it's a totally, you can keep going, but it's something Gary Neville mentions a lot about the resistance to an independent regulator. I can see the arguments for, I can see the arguments against, but you have to question why there's such resistance from the same few clubs, because I think a lot of it is to do with they're so used to being the people that call the shots. Well, we're going ahead, we're doing this, and I'm not saying that would solve everything, a regulator, but even in the white paper they've put into Parliament, it's like consultation with fans groups, consideration of travel, all the things you talked about, Darragh, and it matters. It does matter.
Massively, because like for me now personally, I've been put out of games just simply because of scenarios like that. But I suppose to bring it back to yourself now as well, John, you mentioned him earlier, and former ex-United man Mark Robbins and the job he is doing at Coventry, because you mentioned the point earlier when he was talking about coming into, or with the new owners, all they wanted was a cup run. Obviously, for me personally, like I said, I haven't followed enough to really comment on it, so I suppose this is your time to shine. Obviously, Mark Robbins, a former United player, Coventry legend in his own right now, really.
Oh, massive. Yeah.
So,
to be honest, he's bigger than any player these days. Players matter, and players get you the goals and everything, but the guy is just beyond reproach, and he's done it's more than just doing that. The classic, he's done a good job with the team. He has, but he really dragged the club off its knees. When he took over, we were a week away from getting relegated to League Two.
Jeez,
and we got relegated to League Two. We went down as far as League Two, and I'm not joking. Everyone of a certain age, mine and a few upwards, what's coming. We've got to get out of League Two at the first attempt, because the trap door's there, and we could see ourselves going non-league the way things were going. And that we did one season in League Two, and we got, I think, the second last playoff spot, and he won the final. The guy has been unbelievable.
So, like I was going to say, just from me, from my own perspective, I want to watch more EFL, but like I was saying, the fact is, Sky are bringing in more EFL games now. It'll be more attractive to watch for someone who wouldn't know much about Coventry and what's kind of happened for them. What makes Robbins stand out in terms of his style of play, even something as simple as the style of play, and his mentality as well? Say, what has he done differently to previous managers going forward? Like obviously, managers, because managers can do so much when the owners are up on top of them, but then he, as you say, he dragged them from the depths of League Two to where he is now. So just talk about, let's say, the mentality he's brought to the club, the style of play, that kind of thing, just for anyone who wouldn't know much about him.
Yeah. So the really big thing he did at first, he accepted the job knowing a relegation was coming, and it came. But he still, then one of his first games was the Checker Trade Trophy. Somehow, with the worst team we ever had, we got to the final, and he won a trophy after 2 weeks, and after 3 weeks got relegated. It's just weird the way it worked. But what he did that summer, he worked out there's just the connection between the fans and the club's gone, and I've got to get it back. And I know it sounds really simple, but he put together a pretty honest but basic team to get us out of League Two. There wasn't much pretty stuff. He went and got a guy that sort of to captain the team, that he's a lower leagues guy, but he will die for that club. And sure enough, they got promoted. Then it's the obvious stuff of going to sort of fans events and forums and just opening up a bit and saying, this is your club as well, and for the first year or two, it wasn't that pretty, the football. It was just effective. And then he started working on it really. And like a lot of people, he's been influenced by what's going on above. You know, a lot of possession football, a lot of 3 at the back, 2 wing backs, and you know that worked really well. That got us out of League One. It was a really good year in League One, winning that division. But it happened in COVID year. So we got to March and we were top of the table and everything stopped. And we actually ended up getting promoted on points per game because no one could catch us.
Oh, that's
really
right. I
on that.
remember.
So there was no open top bus
old
parade,
times.
none of that. It was just like it was the team were giving it at the training ground. They had to film it on social media, and that was it because for the next 18 months there was no fans in the ground. But he has adapted. He's really adaptable, right? It's almost comical with Cov fans. He comes across as quite dour, as a bit like there's the same picture side by side. Mark Robbins ecstatic, Mark Robbins fuming. You know, it's the same.
Yeah, I've seen that.
He's that guy, right? But he cares. He's really, really bought into what the club's about. I think when he came back in, he'd been out of football a little while. He'd had a few managerial jobs, and then things had dried up a bit. And because he'd done a very brief spell with us before, and then left to go to Huddersfield for a better offer. So bringing him back was a bit like, ooh, a few people were like, are you sure? But he really grabbed that second chance, realised that maybe the grass isn't always greener somewhere else. And a couple of promotions later, he got us to the playoff final last year and we lost on penalties to Luton. You know, we were that close to going back. So he's really getting us there, and it still feels like that progress is happening. He's changed his style of play this season, ditched the 3 at the back because we lost too many games. But he's always attacking, always positive, always front foot. And it's really good to watch. It's a great season ticket to have. And I'm not just saying that. You know, you lose some, and we're probably just going to miss out on the playoffs this season because we've lost a few too many. But honestly, I love going. I've really liked the social side again. I like the connection again. And actually, we've won some games in really good style this season. And you can just see that we're building and building. And a lot of people feel like next season, if we have a good summer, we'll be in good nick.
And like it's actually a breath of fresh air, really, if I'm honest, to hear talking of a manager actually be able to adapt and say, okay, that's not working, we'll switch to this. Because like honestly, I'm not too sure how much of you actually get to see from watching
quite a bit
yourself.
Yeah.
But like it's more the point of you hear us probably go out about where we're saying, will he ever change the style of football? Because like I don't like myself and Dick will be openly honest and saying we want to keep Eric Ten Hag into next season. But sometimes we're banging our heads against the wall simply because he doesn't change the style of football. Like, I made a couple of comments, and I made it numerous times across different shows on this podcast, and I've said this. You look back at the first game he played against Brighton, and then the 4-0 against Brentford. He was slow to make changes then. After those 2 games, you actually watch him on the touchline, you say, right, he's making notes, he'll switch players around, he'll adapt it slightly, because he can see something changing in the pattern. He'll change it, wait for the opposition manager to change, and then he'll see what he can do to go with that. This season, he hasn't done any of that. And I'd say only probably Jack, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, probably the only game he's actually switched in game was probably the Liverpool game where we beat them 4-3. To me,
good game.
To me, I think that's genuinely the only game where he's actually managed to change it up in game, because it's frustrating to watch, but at the same time you're there like, I can't take my eyes off it.
Yeah, it was a crazy game, and thankfully we came out on the right side of the result. But I have to say, I love John's description of Robbins's connection to the club, and I think that's something we as United fans have probably missed out on. The disconnect between the fans and the management has changed in recent years. They're more into their social media. They're more worried about not interacting with fans. And that's a pity, because, I mean, we love everything about our clubs, and it's great to hear John's kind of story about everything that Mark has actually done at his club, because that's something that we've missed out on for the last few years. So, yeah, the story for Mark Robbins is only going to get bigger, I think. They look like they're on the upward trajectory, and fair play to them. Just don't do it on Sunday.
Lads, can I ask a question? As United fans who go a lot, right?
Yeah.
You talk about the style. I mean, this isn't taking the mick, but it's like, really, what is it? Because it's like the whole thing at the minute, everyone who gets ready to play United is like, they give you so many chances. They're quite open, right? It's 20 and 30 shots on goal per game at the minute, or something crazy like
Yeah.
that. What sort of system is it that allows that when you've got Casemiro in there, who's like one of the best defensive midfielders there's been? But I know he's an older version, right?
Yeah,
it's a great point to make. I'll let you take that one first, Dick. Go on.
Yeah, I think Casemiro had a great season last season, but I think the pressure of the Premier League has caught up with him this year. Yeah, he's definitely been one of the best players in world football ever as a defensive midfielder, but I think the pace has caught up with him this season. We haven't had a settled defence, which is allowing teams to basically throw darts at us for 90 minutes because it's just been ridiculous. We need our settled defence to come back. New goalkeeper came in. I remember when David De Gea came in, he had a shaky start. I think Andre Onana is actually coming good now, and I like the way he's playing at the moment. What we need as a team going forward is we definitely need a good pre-season, get rid of 5 to 10 players, get in players that Eric wants, and hopefully build from there. I'm not going to say we're going to be challenging for the league anytime soon because we need to bed back in and get a proper team system going, but we haven't had a style of play this season. Our style of play this season has, as you say, leave teams have 20 to 30 shots in a game, and no team that does that is ever going to challenge or make top 4. It's just been one of those seasons that has been so up and down. We can't predict what's going to happen. No one can predict what's going to happen on Sunday either. No one can.
I think he makes a valid point here. Like I'll bring it up in 2 comments. He says he plays high press low block, which it looks at on when you see it on TV at least, anyway. And then the fact that he keeps the back line so deep, while the forward to midfield press high, that's why we conceded so many chances. And I saw it firsthand at that very first game of the season against Wolves, because I was literally sat in the halfway line. I can't exactly miss it from a mile away. Where you see Casemiro sitting deep, he's basically playing like he would have last season, just in front of the back 4. But then you had Mounts going higher. He was basically playing like a number 10 because he was meant to be playing an 8, where he was meant to be over and back. He was playing as an 8 because he went so high press with Bruno, it left that gap. And as Dick made the point there, Casemiro's legs have gone. It's amazing how in the space of a few months, because he was still, up until even the end of last season, he was still performing of a certain level where it got the job done at the very least. And it's just that over-reliance on him thinking he's Casemiro, he's still 31, 32, he's still one of the best CDMs in the world. That has caught up with us, I think, because if you're going to play that high press line with the more attacking midfielders and pressing forward line, you are going to need someone who can play like Casemiro, but with better legs, basically. And like, it's a question of who is basically the younger version of Casemiro that we can possibly bring in without breaking the bank. And that's the problem we have, I think, because like I saw the way, I could see what they were trying to do that night in Old Trafford back in August. But I can safely say, with the introduction of Kobbie Mainoo, that's probably throwing Mount as a number 8 out the window. He'll be either put onto either wing, left or right, because he showed he can play on the left at least, but he's more preferred on the right wing. Either that, or he's just going to be playing second fiddle to Bruno for here on in.
Yeah.
But it kind of reverts back to a point I made earlier. If you bring in certain players and you rely on those players, and once they get injured, you have no backup to that player, that's our downfall. We have a starting 11. We have nothing past that. And I think when you have that starting 11 and it's on form, we saw towards the middle of the season where players, I'd say like Lissandro Martinez, Luke Shaw, when they kind of came back from their little niggles, they were straight back in the team. They gelled back in. They got injured again. Martinez with that freak injury, and then Shaw's persistence, whether it was his persistence or Ten Hag's persistence to play, say, Kenilworth Road, who knows? But the fact he went off was about half time there, not even a half hour played. It just kind of set the tone, and like we can make so many excuses for the injuries, but the buck has to stop somewhere as well. So, like on the whole side of play, like you can see moments where it's kind of, I won't refer to cheek-to-check passing because it's not that, but it's more just like quick one-touch passing, that kind of thing. Like it was a joy to see when it's in its fluidity, but it's like Pogba at Man United, very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Well, that's the best way for it, really.
It feels like watching them as somebody who doesn't support them. They're entertaining. They're in entertaining games, is how I'd put it. It's like I caught a bit of the Bournemouth game last week, and it's a 2-2 draw. It sort of sways back and forth, and just because this is the thing, I think Ten Hag's been quite sort of not defensive about, but he gets asked, so he's got to answer the question. And he said, "Look, we might be giving 20 chances away. We're not giving 20 goals away, are we? We'll take our chances with what we do at the back in order to do the good things that we do." And it's obviously not going to get you top 4 because I don't think 5th's going to be CL now, is it? And it's not quite there, but you've been in some brilliant games this season, and Rashford's still got a finish in him. Garnacho's got clear talent, Højlund, I think there's something there,
If he gets anything put to his feet, though, the problem.
Yeah. I like Mainu. I think everyone likes Mainu as well.
Yeah, when Højlund gets service, he'll do a job for us. Just before the international break, he was on fire. The international break couldn't have come at a worse time for him. It's back to the starting blocks from since we've returned, but I definitely think he's a player for the future. And if the manager gets players in that will feed him the ball, he's definitely going to do a job for us.
Yeah.
Massively. And I think at this point we'll bring it forward to Sunday itself. So lads, what are you thinking? Because I'll make the point here. Should McTominay start over Casemiro? Because the fact that Scott McTominay has now been told, or we've been told, is coming back into the squad. Is it time to bring him back in because of the struggles that we've kind of mentioned about Casemiro? Or do we leave it with Casemiro? Because you got to think McTominay with his goal scoring form over Casemiro with his, when he's on it, solidity in defence. It's like, it kind of brings into question where the whole starting lineup really goes there, really.
I'll take Beck first.
Sorry, but say whichever one of you want to take it. Sorry.
I'd probably start Scott on Sunday, in my opinion. I think we need his energy. I think if needs be, we can bring Casemiro on at a later time. But I think Scott can definitely do a job for us on Sunday, because I expect Coventry to attack, because they'll know that if they get at United, they could definitely get some good reward from it. So I definitely think Coventry aren't going to sit back and leave us spray the ball around. We're going to need someone in there who can break the ball up. We're going to need someone who will fight for everything. And no matter what anyone says about McTominay, he's definitely going to put his foot in, put his head in where it hurts to win the game. So I definitely think we need. I personally would start with him on Sunday anyway. Yeah.
It's I was going to say, do you want to make the point that would you set it up like we've been trying to set it up at the start of the season, where obviously no matter what way we kind of set up, our midfield's kind of open anyway with the system we're trying to play. But I suppose, would you bring in, how would I describe it? Would you bring in that kind of diamond-esque formation that he played against City that time to try and be a more compact midfield at the time? Or would you think pressing forward with at least one midfielder back?
I'd probably go. I think we have to make our midfield compact, because all season it's been wide open for teams to run through. So initially, we're going to have to try steady ourselves and get into the game. Bruno's going to be there to get the ball forward. I hate when he has to drop back to nearly defence to collect the ball. So we need to solidify in midfield if we do want to win the game. So I think that's what we need going forward, yeah.
That's a good way to start. And then, John, I suppose we won't ask you any United-related questions. I'm going to ask you to enlighten us on more what we can expect from Coventry on Sunday, and what kind of players we should be looking out for, really.
Yeah, we play a couple of different variations on I suppose if you really went basic, you say it's a 4-3-3, right?
Mm.
But there's a couple of different variations on it, and those variations really at home, especially, we tend to have a lot of the ball. But I have a feeling on Sunday, kind of like we did at Wolves at Molineux, it will be a little bit more acknowledgement of the fact that this is a caliber of player we don't play against very often, and you have to respect them without overdoing it. Don't be afraid of the ball, but equally accept you might not have as much of it as you used to, and a bit of counter attack on it really, and using that pace and just that thing of nicking the ball away now and again and just suddenly breaking forward. We have a decent bit of pace, and the two fellas who've really got the goals this season, because a lot of people were worried about Gyökeres leaving when he's been a couple of years back to back of really being the main man, and they used the money to go and get two strikers, and they spent a good bit on Ellis Sims from Everton.
Oh yes.
And a few more quid, both about 7.5, 8 million sort of figure. That amount on Ellis Sims, and then the American guy Hadji Wright, who got the winner at Wolves. They got the 3 goals at Wolves between them. So they're on 17 and 18 goals respectively. So they've done well for first season. It was a slow start.
Yeah, massively, yeah.
It was a really slow start for both of them, and they were finding their feet. But since sort of November, December, everybody's kicked on, and they've, there's a lot of pace there. There's a lot of strength there. I think they'll both really fancy having a good run. I mean, do we think it'll be Maguire and this Cambuala lad at the back?
I want to think so. I believe it would be anyway.
Yeah, I think they'll fancy that.
It will be okay.
Yeah, and when I say I think they'll fancy it, I don't think for a second, we're going to go out there and smash them. I just think there's bits of their game that they can impose themselves on those lads a bit. Wright plays off the left hand of, he's a front three, so Sims is the centre forward, the number 9, right? Wright comes in off the left. He was a centre forward, but he's really done a lot of damage in that sort of space in between the right back and the right centre half. He really goes into that space there and does a lot of damage, and he's quick, and Sims is quick, strong. So I guess when we break forward, if we can nick the ball away, probably through someone like Callum O'Hare or Ben Sheaf in the middle. Ben Sheaf's a good player. He's the captain. Really worth keeping an eye on him. Number 14, excellent player. If he has a good day, we'll have a good day. It's one of those, really. He's such a leader for us. He's a good player. He came from the Arsenal academy. He couldn't get a game at Arsenal. Dropped down, accepted, it's not going to work for me there. But we got a really good player, and he took his time. It took a year or two to get used to the Championship, but now he's sort of mid-20s, really tidy player. And I think with or without us, we'll probably get a crack at the Premier League in the next year or two. Yeah.
And that's a good thing to hear, because I do want to see, because I'm going to be there now myself Sunday. I can't wait to see what kind of football Coventry produce, and hopefully we are seeing you in the near future. So at this point, I will get you to start. So this Mark, my God, I'm on the place. Dick, sorry, my apologies. Starting lineup predictions.
I'm going to go for a 3-2 United win. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I think both teams are going to have a cut off it. This is Mark Robbins' dream. Has to be coming up again.
Yeah.
Especially when he's built Coventry up to where they are. I think he's going to love it, and he deserves all the respect he's been given. Coventry deserve all the respect for getting there as well. So once it's a good, clean game, not ruined by any on-field drama, I'll be happy.
Yeah, that's a good way to bring it. So who do you think it's like there's not much choice really in our lineups, really, if I'm honest. So like I suppose really you're thinking Dalot right back, or would you say Wan-Bissaka right back and play Dalot at left back, or what were you thinking there, Dick?
That's what I'm expecting. Maguire in defence. I have a funny feeling he's going to start McTominay. I don't know why. I just have a funny feeling he's going to start McTominay. I think Garnacho can have a big impact on this game. I think he's going to love the wide pitch in Wembley, and I think this is a game for him. So I'm expecting him to be a big threat for United on Sunday.
Yeah, like I was thinking in my own head there. No, like I say, for me, like my midfield right itself really, because personally I still think he's going to go with the experience of because I love McTominay. I love the fact he scored goals for us, but I'm still going to stick with my guns and say Cobby. I was going to say Casemiro and Bruno in the midfield, and the front three, in my opinion, when it's on form, will write itself in the form of Rashford, Highland, and Garnacho. Like I like to think that Anthony might push himself in now that he's back. Who knows really what will happen there. Score wise, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to try and keep it low because my expectations for United, what we're in the semi-final, are low. I will say 2-1 to United. I do feel we will get the upper hand if we get a ball through that line of Coventry's defence. It will be a Highland goal at the very least. Couldn't tell you who scored the second, and even Keane here, 3-1 to United with Garnacho, Rashford, and even McTominay. Like you're both going with McTominay, obviously in the midfield. So at this point, John, I'll bring it back to you. Obviously, we wouldn't know most of the players from Coventry. I'll be honest, I don't anyway personally. But I suppose in your ideal 11, what would be your lineup for Sunday and your score prediction?
Well, I mean, I won't do the whole 11 because, let's say, these are lads that really don't register. But I would keep an eye out for Ben Sheaf. I think he's definitely, he's captain for a reason, and he's central midfield. Everything goes through him, really. There's a boy who I think will be leaving. Unfortunately, his contract's about to run out, and we haven't really let that happen much recently. But he did his knee, did his ACL last year. So when he would have been signing a contract, they had to see how that went. Called Callum O'Hare. He's come back and done well.
I've seen him. He's
yeah,
good.
I think he'll be a bossman in the summer, and I think he's had a couple of really good offers at home and abroad. So unfortunately, I think this is actually his sort of game, and I can't see how he doesn't start because the one player he's usually in competition for with that role is suspended for Sunday for 2 yellow cards, which is Casey Palmer. So O'Hare will start, I think, and I think he's the sort of player that has it in him. He's been very up and down this season, went through an amazing run of form around Christmas, had a little dip lately, but he's got ability. He's a good player. He was at Villa as a kid and very much sort of 2 or 3 years below Jack Grealish, but spent a lot of time around him, I think he's a real classic number 10, nippy, skillful, low centre of gravity. He's a tiny wee fella. And I think if him and Ben Sheaf play well, it gives the forward guys a chance. There's a lot of muscle and speed up front. I know it sounds obvious, but with the number of chances United give you,
you should be getting something.
Well, if we get a good one at 0-0, I know it sounds obvious. We have to take it. We have to take it because if we don't, we could get buried. The names you mentioned, Garnacho, Bruno, we don't play boys like this very often. These are very, very top players. Any one of them could really hurt us. But there is that puncher's chance, which I think we have. So look out for those names I think I mentioned. It needs a lot of things to go right for us to even get close. But you wouldn't expect me to say any different. I have to carry on with the dream.
Of course.
So I'll give us a 2-1 win, and I'll ride to the FA Cup final on my unicorn.
And look, no better way to finish it on the possible fairy tale finish. No possible better finish there. Look, John, it's been an absolute blast having you on. Thank you so much for joining us anyway today, man.
Pleasure's all mine, boys. Thanks for having me. And like I say, I know it sounds cheesy, but enjoy it. It's like we can't believe it. We can't believe we're in an FA Cup semi-final against Man United, and we don't want to be there as tourists. We want to play our part, and we want to give a good account. But it's one of those things you're like, wow, this is happening. It's 2 days away. We're going.
Yeah.
And look, Dick, I know you won't be there. I'll be there, and I'll make sure you're there with me in spirit. But nevertheless, we'll end it there, lads.
Come on, have Darragh. Thanks, man. Thanks.
No problem at all.
Thanks for having us, boys. Cheers.
Look, thanks very much.
Go easy.